I'm Chris Yandak. Today on CYInterview, we have a special treat. We welcome back, it's been almost 20 years since I've last talked with the world's dangerous man. We welcome the one, the only MMA legend, pro wrestling legend, the one, the only Ken Shamrock. And by the way, as a side note, also the king of the ring. Ken, how are you today? Thanks for being back with us on CYInterview.
Hey, thank you guys for having me, man. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And also joining us today is CYInterview sponsor, the founder of Epic Financial Strategies, LLC, Mr. Rob Gill. Rob, thanks for joining us today on Trajectory Tuesday.
Thank you, Chris, and super honored to be on here with Ken. An amazing gift for me to say that right now.
Ken, just to begin, you're here today because you're talking about your new pro fighting promotion, Valor Bare Knuckle. So why don't you just give us an overview?
Yeah, Valor is, I can't even tell you when my last fight was, but it got to a point to where, it was just a struggle for training. Fighting, I've always loved fighting. It didn't matter, I just loved it. But the training part of it just got so hard. Felt like I couldn't get through training. And so it felt like it was time for me to maybe step away and think of something else. But I didn't want to, man. I just still had the love and the desire to be a part of it. So I felt like, if I have to step away and not be able to fight inside, I want to be a part of it somehow. And so I came up with the idea of, being a promoter, which is is not the same as fighting, but at least I'm a part of it. A lot of different types of struggles, but exciting and fun. And so I decided to jump into it, but I just didn't want to jump into it just to put shows on, and so I could be a part of it and just go with the flow. Just like I was when I was a fighter, I jumped into it and I wanted to put something together that I could be proud of, the fans could be proud of, the media would cover, and be different, like not just going with the flow. And so when I did it, I had to go back and try to figure out how I could come up with something. And I remember looking on social media and all these street beefs and different things going on through fighting on. It was getting millions of views of these guys that were just nobodies, but yet they were out there scrapping. And I thought to myself, man, I remember back in the day when I got angry 6 months into it after they put gloves on people because they said it was going to protect the fighter. And 6 months in, I remember thinking to myself, this isn't protecting us. It's protecting the guy's hands, not our heads. And so I felt like there was an opportunity here for me to bring back that kind of God-given talent in fighting and not putting something on somebody to make them better. And so I jumped into the bare knuckle. And I remember, when other bare knuckles started out, I remember thinking to myself, let's just try to build something that would be different, exciting, but let these guys run and kind of figure out what's right and wrong. And it's kind of how it started. Was I remember going out, getting a team together, and kind of sharing my vision with the business team that I have now on how I didn't want to have ropes or cages because I felt like it slowed fights down. The gloves not being pure God-given talent, and being more dangerous in my opinion, or being able to punch a guy in the head 100 times. I just felt like we take that away. The clinching felt like that was the most boring thing in boxing. If they would take that out, boxing would be so much more exciting. So just all these different things I thought of being able to move into that direction and have something that I thought, from my experience in fighting and being a part of it for so long, to create something with this vision that would be cutting edge and different and people would enjoy it. And we did our first fight and it was unbelievable. Even much better than what I expected. Obviously the clinching and the kid with no ropes and stuff, there was some learning curves that still have to go into this, being able to set the standard and the rules, making sure that guys understand they're going to get penalized, they do certain things, and being able to get it to where it needs to be so that the fights are fast, exciting, and fan-friendly and fighter-friendly. And also, in my opinion, you don't take as much long-term brain damage, in my opinion. So I felt like there was something there after our first fight. COVID hit. We had to take a step back. Start working on some of the other business structures and things that we needed. Got started on our app so we could stream it live. There's a lot of things that we worked on because I just didn't want to put on fights with no fans. I felt like fans are a major part of being a fighter and going in and fighting. And so we waited, and now we're here, October 27th at the UNF Arena in Jacksonville, Florida. We're doing Valor BK 2. And we're excited, man. I think that we got a great card. I handpicked them.
Yeah. So just for everyone out there, Valor VALORBK.com is the promotional website. Now, Ken, I just want to tell you quickly. So Rob Gill actually runs his own AAU basketball league. So Rob, what are your thoughts on everything that Ken has shared, and what it's like to run your own sports organization?
Well, I think when you look at Ken's track record, and obviously legendary Ken Shamrock had preceded you, when I think back, just doing some research, I always like to know when someone is where they are right now, how did it start, right? So for me, I grew up blue collar in Bayonne, New Jersey. I have a sister that married Bob Hurley's brother, Tim Hurley. Bob Hurley from a basketball world is the greatest high school coach in history. He has two sons, Bobby Jr., my age, and Danny, 2 years younger than me. And I knew about excellence in basketball, even though I know it was happening when I saw it live. Like, the world met the Hurleys 10 years after I knew them, right? So I was reading a little bit about, where you grew up and, some of the mean streets that you kind of came up on, and surviving the success of the streets. Number one was apparent. Number two, you were an unbelievable athlete. It sounded like to me you were a great athlete from what I read. Even had an opportunity to do a tryout for the Chargers. There was some kind of football scholarship in there, at least playing some level of college football. And in the middle of all this, you decided to fight, right? And I think growing up in the inner city where you did have that Southern accent, but you were in a neighborhood that either forced you to cower or fight, you chose to fight, right? And I don't know if that's taught. Like, I don't know if there's an ingredient book to that other than the instinctual nature to survive, right? And apparently that's what happened with you. And then it took you on this journey with all the different martial arts and boxing and everything else. So when I think of that, and then I fast forward to this moment in time, for me with basketball, I'm 52 and I have two kids, 16, 17-year-old. They were sophomores and juniors last year. I started an AAU program. What happened pretty quick though is business has been well for me. And as a result of it, my kids don't have the struggle that I have. However, this organization that I created brought me around kids that were me 20 and 30 years ago. So I fell in love with this AAU program, not only by building out a financial literacy course. We have a digital course that is really broken down in 4 hours. But also on top of that, what's important to know is that we also created an NIL collective so we could not only pull out the distortion and the corruption inside of AAU basketball, but properly pay kids based on merit of achievement, including financial literacy. So all that kind of happened in the last 6 months. And as we step into season 2, which will be next March, we already now have like the number 2 ranked 8th grade team in the country that's putting me in a conversation with Under Armour for a sneaker deal. Not for me, but for the kids. Right. So when I think of that, and I think about what you just said, you've learned in business, I assume, what not to do by making mistakes to do, right? And it's kind of that's what I'm understanding and where I'm at right now, Chris, if that makes any sense.
Ken, thoughts?
Yes. Yeah, I think that, there's a lot of things that you can look at and take from each of them, which is the success part of it. And it really is just, I was told, and this is early on, that being first isn't always the best. People always want to go out there and try to create something new and be that entrepreneur and vision and jump out and do this new thing. And there's a whole lot of learning that goes along and a whole lot of money that's spent from your mistakes that you make during those times. And if you come in behind that and watch what the other person's doing and that the success that they're having and the things that they're doing wrong, you don't have to make those same mistakes. And you can look at it and go, I can do that better because I see they're doing this. But if we do this, this is going to be another level above. And they're already locked into what they're doing because they've already built it, right? So it's coming from behind. You literally look what's wrong, not do it, and create things that are better than what they're doing. And so that's kind of the vision we had, was to kind of come in behind, understand what's going on and how things are going, and try to come in and create things that we believe visually and action-wise would be better.
Mm. And, when I think of when MMA first, here's my question to that. When you first started, and remember, let me just apologize, I may get things wrong So I just want you to know that. But I'm going to go in MMA, like, you know, you had your rivalries and everything else. When that first started, that whole model first, and you're in those fights, did you know early on that this was something different that was going to be legendary and generational? Did you actually understand that as it was happening? And I'm talking about in the early moments, not when the fights got real big.
Yeah, you know, I was there at that first one, and I remember seeing the first fight come out, Gerard Godot and Sumo. When he kicked him in the face when he was on the ground, literally, it was a shocking moment because in any place that you were ever born or raised or understood, you can't do that. You go to jail and you go to prison for attempted murder.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet, nothing happened. And it was literally a shock to everyone that happened. It was, but not even a street fighter. You literally got a guy that kicked him in the football, kicked him in the head, which when you look at it, you go, he tried to kill him. Like, that's stuff you do in the street when you try to put somebody in a hospital. And yet this was legal. And it was, I mean, for me, because of the way I grew up, it was something I had been very, very familiar with. So it wasn't a shock as far as me going in and fighting, because I've been there. But it was a shock that it was being done. And that it was almost this feeling inside of me where I went, I just, now all of a sudden I wasn't nervous anymore. I was like, I know this. Like, I can do this. Whereas I think if you talk to anybody else that was a boxer or a jiu-jitsu guy or other than a hoist, because they've been doing this forever, 50 years, they've been doing this stuff. So they were already programmed in knowing how to do this. But everybody else in there who comes from probably an organized sport, literally froze. They're like, you can't do that. And it's like, no, I believe that it literally means what it says. No rules. And so I think that the tone set there, you know, and what we see today, obviously being more organized and everything, but it really set the tone for what people were going to fall in love with later in years.
And you knew right away that was like fish to water for you? Like, you knew that was, you've arrived, like it was a natural thing for you?
No, because I think, and I'm different, right? I'm always in the moment. And for me, in the moment was an opportunity. And everything I've ever done in my life was in the moment, opportunities, even things that were bad, when I was stealing or doing whatever I was doing. I was in that moment, and it was an opportunity, and I was going to seize it. And so that's kind of where I was in that moment. When I saw it, I realized it was an opportunity for me, because this is what I grew up doing this. And there's only one person and no weapons. And I'm like, okay, this is my moment. And so I'm just thinking in the moment. And then even after that, you know, fights after that, I never really looked at it and went, oh, this thing is going to be huge. But inside, and the feeling I had is I knew this thing was going to be something. But it wasn't like I could visualize it. But you know how you just get that feeling like, okay, this is special.
Yep. So that leads me to another question, Chris, if you don't mind, because I love chasing excellence.
Sure. Go ahead. Just before we continue, Rob, just for Ken as well, next month is the 30th anniversary, actually, of the first UFC. Go ahead, Rob.
Amazing. Yeah. So, Ken, my question is, I love chasing human excellence and peak performance. Peak performance physically starts with mindset first, at least in my opinion. How would you prepare mentally? And then how did you survive the success of groupies and hanger-ons once this became, you know, prominent and popular?
Well, I didn't. You know, I've got a book out that literally, I mean, I survived, obviously, and I became successful, but I failed in a lot of different ways with the power, the success, the notoriety, the money. It ate me up in a certain part of my career. I was still able to compete at a high level. I was still able to go out and win world championships because I was just a great athlete, and things just came naturally to me. I trained hard, but I also played hard. And so it got the best of me at one point. You know, I had to completely start over again. You know, fortunately for me, you know, I had good people around me, a strong family, good wife, kids were always support, but I was always there for them, even though I went out and did certain things. But I was able to always kind of be there when they needed me. So things worked out, obviously, as I started to pull things back together again.
Yeah, so I think surviving success means you have to fail first, right? So that's I have a book coming out that talks about when I first made my $1 million 3 years in a row, sober in AA, by the way, because there was a time when I was a drug addict and alcoholic that I was in my disease, but now I got sober one day at a time. I couldn't survive the money that was coming in because I had so many, handed down wealth wounds that although I didn't drink, when that money came in, I wasn't able to handle it, spent it poorly, made bad decisions, and had my ego all over the place. So I had to go through massive business interruptions as a result of that, rebuild everything, and then, kind of make that next step. And even at this moment, I'm going through some beautiful challenges in the growth of, a company that's worth 27 million that 2 years ago was worth about 3 million. Now, if I want to go to 100 million, I got to make moves and correct certain things that would prevent me from growing right now. So to me, surviving success is learning from your mistakes, right?
Right.
And that's where I kind of get to when I talk about that. I think that, what I hear about you were able to win big fights and you trained hard, it's because you were able to compartmentalize certain things, I'm assuming, and being able to kind of like get focused and zeroed in on your training. Can you speak a little bit about during training? Did the world just not exist during that time and how you were able to kind of keep your mind right?
Yeah, again, like after fights, there was a couple of weeks off, I would tear it up. Those were the times where things got real crazy and unorganized for me and not focused. But whenever there was a fight that was signed, and I knew the fight, I went into my training. And, those are things I think that allowed me to be able to be successful through failure, was because you knew when you were doing things wrong and you were able to correct them. And that really, I think, for me, being able to have that drive and never want to fail, never want to go back to where I started from. I never want to be able to experience and feel those things I felt back then. And the only way that happens is if I focus and do what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I've always had that drive, even though I was screwing up, money was coming in, power, everything was given to me for free, all those things. It was very, very difficult. It was the most powerful drug I've ever had to fight was, success in a massive way. But I was able to do that. And now it's coming back. Obviously, I've been in a good position for quite some time and being able to understand how I could actually lose all that and go back to where I started from. So, like you said, understanding and learning through the failures is really what keeps you above failure. And I constantly keep reminding myself of that. That failure and the learning experience I got from that is valuable, and do not take it for granted. Make sure you understand what it is and don't do it again.
Yeah. Chris, this is great. I mean, I could keep going with questions, but I don't want to hog up the interview.
Yeah, it's fine. Rob, there was so many great contributions there in those. So, Ken, I just want to ask before we will wrap up talking about Valor, but I do want to ask you a couple quick things. Art Davie, as you know, co-founder of the UFC, longtime friend, supporter of CYInterview, obviously, always speaks highly of you guys. Of course, the book Is This Legal? Take me back 30 years next month, first UFC ever. What does this mean? Can you believe it's been 30 years?
It's crazy, seeing the ups and downs and seeing where I'm at now, even going all the way back to when I was a kid. I mean, it's just, I'm blessed, right? I mean, I think that's probably the perfect word, is just being blessed, and I have an understanding of who I am and what I need to be, and I've been able to do that. But when you look back at the start of it, 30 years and the very first one, and the explosiveness of that first fight that literally set the tone for what people fell in love with later on was just tremendous. And it's crazy because going into it, nobody understood. Nobody knew what they were getting into. I mean, even though it's clearly said right there, no holds barred, nobody understood what that meant, because we've never seen it other than in pro wrestling. No holds barred, anything goes, chairs and bats and all of this stuff. But that's what we knew as no holds barred. Like, that's what we thought no holds barred was. And even myself did not believe that I was going into a real fight until I actually saw a real fight, which was Gerard Goodell kicking the sumo guy in the face. And that set the tone, the reality of this is the real deal. I think the only thing that happened during that time, which was frustrating to me, and I think for a few others, that really hindered the ability of us being able to fight at our full potential, was when they literally took tape away. They wouldn't let guys take their hands. They called a rules meeting, which was confusing because there's no rules. But then in that rules meeting, they basically said that, you know, Zane Frazier and Art Emerson and a few other guys couldn't take their hands. But they let Art wear a boxing glove. So I don't understand that and never could understand it and never got an explanation for it. Told me I couldn't wear my wrestling shoes. It's like I'd never gone in a ring or any kind of fighting service without shoe wear. So I didn't understand the effect that it would have on me, but there's nothing I could do about it. It was the day before the fight, and you know, you're going to fight or you're not fighting. And so there was a lot of that stuff that happened early on, which really made me doubt the reality of this no holds barred. But then the night of the fight, there was no doubt. When they kicked him in the face, there was absolutely no doubt that this was what they said it was, other than no rules. There were rules.
There's so much that I could ask you from your pro wrestling career, but we'll just touch on two things quickly. I think that your match with The Rock at the King of the Ring in '98, I think that's the highlight of your WWE career. I mean, you know, this is before The Rock becomes the biggest superstar in the world. He's on his way up, but you're there, you win, you become King of the Ring, and you're the lead in right before the Undertaker and Mankind match. Unbelievable pay-per-view, one of the most memorable in WWE history. What is that time in your life? What do you reflect back upon on being the King of the Ring, and what was ahead after that?
Yeah, it was kind of a blur for me because when I was there, I was literally skyrocketed into the main card. I mean, I was literally one of the faces of WWF. There was probably 10 to 12 guys that were featured in WWF at that time. So there's a lot of talent. And so I just remember it just being one show after another show, constantly trying to put out good matches. And, you know, then we got to the actual King of the Ring and then me winning that. I remember standing there realizing, like, okay, I made it. You know, I mean, all the stuff that was doubt, selling out, people being angry that I went into WWF and the fake, you know, type of stuff, and that I wasn't a real fighter. You know, I was soft. I mean, you name it. I'm being nice on what was being said, and to stand there at King of the Ring and realize that I made it, like. My legacy and everything that I had built is not going to get trashed because success, you know, makes everything right. And when I won that, I realized I made it. Yeah.
And then, so moving forward on that, Rob, you know, Valor BK, his bare knuckle fighting promotion is going to have its second event, and I think is it next week? It's next week, Ken, right? Next week.
October 27th at the UNF Arena in Jacksonville, Florida, man. We're doing VBK2.
ValorBK.com. Rob, any suggestions, thoughts for Ken running his new promotion?
Yeah, I think that, well, I do have a question. Given Ken a suggestion is like one of these looking for a sunset. I can't even imagine giving him any suggestions, but
no, come on, I want to hear it.
I'll talk about like proximity and ecosystem merger in a second, but Ken, if you could just stop for a second and say 5 years from today, like right in this moment, we came back in for another interview and we reflected on what happened, you know, between today and 5 years back. Where do you see what you're doing? What would be the ideal scenario for you to feel like that, you know, this is that next phase? You did step into another part of this business and everything that you wanted to accomplish, you accomplished. What would that look like?
Well, you know, because of the way my life has gone, there's got to be struggle in order for me to be successful, because everything I've ever done in my life, living or sports, I've had my downs and I've had to overcome those downs and get to the top. and I don't see it any different with Valor. I believe that because we're a new company, because I don't have the experience of promoting a fight, I have a lot of people around me that are very experienced in business. I believe that we're going to not struggle, but we're going to start slow. Even though we sold our first fight out, I think the second one coming in, we're going against Georgia, Florida college football on Saturday. Friday night, we're doing our fights. I'm hoping that people will come and start their weekend off with the Friday night fights with Valor. Go watch Georgia, Florida, Saturday college football on Saturday. Sunday, catch the NFL, enjoy the weekend, and then they can start their Monday. But that's what I see. But I also believe for my future and how things are going, I believe that we're going to be able to start out being able to put on good fights. Our vision and the Valor bare knuckle will start growing gradually, which I believe is probably a good thing, rather than bursting onto the scene and then not having to be able to have the whereabouts to be able to control all of that coming in all at once. I think it's going to be a gradual build out. I think that as in 5 years, and this is just my thought, I think Valor bare knuckle, and not just Valor bare knuckle, but bare knuckle is going to overtake the combat space because how exciting it is and how fast the fights go.
Awesome.
Gentlemen, we've got to leave it there. But Ken Shamrock, the world's most dangerous man, thanks for joining us again on CYInterview. It's been 19 years since we last spoke. So great to have you on. Just very quickly, Ken, in 60 seconds, I've never asked you this. How did you get the world's most dangerous man title? How did that happen?
Yeah, it was a TV special during the low days of the UFC in the very beginning when things were looked upon as we were just barbarians and thugs. They wanted to do a special on me, and I was afraid of the media. They explained to me they just want to show people who we are as humans, husbands, fathers. And so I said, yes, let's see what happens. And so they did a special. I loved it. They treated us as being human beings, just doing a different event. That's how I got it, was through a actual TV, world's most dangerous person.
Ken Shamrock.
Well, can I say one thing? So sorry.
Yes.
One
60 seconds.
Yep. I think of Beats, and the reason why Beats took off is because they had what we call mavens, people that high-end athletes that would wear the Beats as they were going to their sporting events. I think Ken has what we call relationship capital. I don't know who's a friend or a foe, but the relationship capital, whoever those folks are, whether it's The Rock or not, or other people, I would have them in some way or another. Maybe he could interview them or something where they could promote his by him promoting them, they could promote him back on what he's got going on. That would be
we did that with Mike Tyson when I went on his show and asked him what he thought about bare knuckle, and he put it over. So we're doing that. We're gradually getting out there to a lot of these different celebrities. But I think once we get this next show, BBK2, we're back at it again. A lot of these other things, like you're saying, which is great. I believe that 100%. We got to get other people involved with us that are friends of mine, that have watched me throughout my career, come on and do interviews and talk about it.
Yeah, and get people outside the industry too. Just so you know, interview that always comes from outside the industry. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah.
No problem. Ken Shamrock, CYInterview sponsor, Rob Gill. Thank you both for being on CYInterview today, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for watching today's CYInterview segment from Las Vegas. Please hit the like button and please hit the subscribe button to be updated on all future CYInterview content from Las Vegas and beyond.